A president steps down. A CMO walks out and starts a new consultancy. A VP of enrollment gets hired without a mandate. And no one fully understands that until year 2, right? Each one of these things looks like a separate story, but together they're a pattern.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday, I'll break down what actually matters. Fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. There are maybe a dozen people in the country who can tell you what's actually happening in the leadership layer of higher ed right now. Not what's just in press releases, but what's actually happening in the rooms where the jobs are getting filled. And my guest today is one of them. If you've been watching the turnover in higher ed and wondering what it means for the sector or for your own career, this is the episode to listen to. Today, I am joined by Meredith Rosenberg, co-founder and partner at NU Advisory Partners. Her firm is an AI native executive search firm that spans numerous industries. They set out to break the mold in an industry that hasn't changed in decades, pairing a top-tier team with tech data and AI to make search smarter, faster, and built for how businesses actually move today. Meredith sits at the intersection of higher ed and ed tech, placing leaders into universities, public companies, PE-backed businesses, and nonprofits. She was named the 2026 EdTech Awards leadership winner, and she's also a 12-time marathoner, working her way through the 6 world majors. Meredith, welcome to the Pulse. You run marathons. Can we just start there? When do you stop? Do you never stop?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I do stop occasionally, but yes, I just ran the Boston Marathon just about 2 weeks ago. Wow. It was my 12th marathon in 5 years. In 5 years.
You've got all those medals behind you. Look at
that.
I
do. I have them hanging up just behind me, just right in my office. Just brings me joy. Yes, because I'm a relatively new runner, so I just started.
I was
going to
ask,
5 years
like,
ago.
have you haven't been doing this your whole life, which is quite inspiring to someone like me who hates running.
Yes, I just ran my first marathon when I turned 50, 5 years ago, just because it was something to do to celebrate my birthday.
That's awesome. So, heck of a bucket list item to check off.
And now
on a
I'm
milestone
just
birthday.
Going for all of them for the world major. So then maybe I'll stop.
What made this Boston one maybe special for you?
So it was an unexpected race because of the snow that happened in April. And also because towards the end of the race, I actually stopped to pick up a runner that I saw sitting by the side of the race about a mile from the end. And she apparently had been crawling for a while. And I always said to myself, I always look around for down runners that I would help carry to the end. And I saw her there. I stopped. Another woman stopped. And then another person stopped. And then 4 of us wound up carrying her a mile to the finish line. And we put her right to the finish. And she scooted across on her end. And I have to say that was just a spectacular ending to just an otherwise great day.
Wow. I'm tearing up a little bit. That's amazing.
It was really special.
Oh my gosh.
It was great. I was actually on my way to a PR and I stopped to just help get this woman across the line because she was so close to the end that you just can't leave a runner down. And for me, just the community around running is really just what makes the sport.
That's incredible. That is incredible, Meredith. Wow. It's like a weird thing to now pivot into talking about
let's talk about higher ed.
Let's talk about hiring. No, that's such a great story. And thank you for sharing it with us. So listeners, as we get into it, Meredith is a special guest because higher ed is in a leadership moment and a lot of people are just seeing it one frame at a time. A president steps down, a CMO walks out and starts a new consultancy. A VP of enrollment gets hired without a mandate, and no one fully understands that until year 2, right? Each one of these things looks like a separate story, but together they're a pattern. And Meredith is, I think, one of the few people with a view of this whole thing. Her firm gets called when an institution or an edtech company has a problem they think a hire will solve. And her job is to figure out if that's even true and then to find someone who can actually do the work. So what she sees from that seat is the part that the rest of us don't get to see. Which leaders are actually getting hired up and why, where boards are still falling in love with the wrong things, and the crossover that's happening between edtech and institutions, and which direction of that movement is actually producing better outcomes. And then you layer in AI, right? How is AI starting to reshape what executive teams even need from a hire in ways that might not actually be showing up in the job descriptions quite yet? So this episode is about what Meredith's vantage point reveals about the sector, about what you should be doing right now if you are building towards your own next move. So Meredith, you have placed leaders into all sorts of institutions, public ed tech companies, PE portfolios, on and on and on. When you zoom out across all of that right now, like what's the single biggest pattern that you're seeing in higher ed leadership that maybe most people are missing?
Yeah, so as you had said, I sit at the intersection of institutions and companies that are solving for growth and transformation, maybe some turnaround, but it's really about growth, however that is defined for that organizations. I spend my time talking with presidents, with boards, with operators and investors, really helping them think through what are these problems they are going to solve. What most people miss, I think, or the patterns we're seeing, maybe that's a better way to say that, is that there is sometimes a structural mismatch in how higher ed hires and what it really needs next. And so the gap is sometimes what institutions say they need and what they actually hire and how they actually hire. So are they following a traditional pattern for how they hire versus really thinking about, can we be more agile? Can we be more inclusive, I would say? What are some of the other signals that we see? So we're not just going for the same old, but really thinking about what does our institution want to be in the future?
What are I don't know. I think most people assume that the executive search starts with a list of names, and I don't know that that is true. So when you get the phone call from the board or the president of the institution, what question do they typically ask? But what question are you actually answering?
So they typically say, we have a gap in this particular role because someone is either leaving or planning on leaving, or sometimes in the case of private companies, we want to replace our leader. What they really need to think about, and what the problem we are trying to solve, is what is the business need? And what does the company need to be in a year from now, in 2 years from now? What does success really look like? So instead of framing around the candidates and thinking who the best candidates are, we stop and think about what's the problem you're really trying to solve, and what does success look like, and what does someone have to be great at doing in order to solve those problems, and then that ultimately leads to the individuals. So again, we think about it. Candidates certainly are part of the conversation, but it is always about the bigger picture about what success looks like for that organization. And in higher ed, that's really different across institutions, certainly different in the private sector.
Yeah. So let's workshop a scenario. You've got an institution that has maybe had a lot of enrollment challenges recently, and maybe they're on their fourth CMO in less than a decade. If they're calling you and saying we need a new CMO because the fourth one just left, how are you approaching that conversation? Because something tells me the CMO might not be the problem.
So I think you come from a marketing background, so understand that why you start with a CMO, but is it really a broader institutional issue? So is it an enrollment issue? Is there something happening on campus that you're not able to attract students? What's the broader picture? And are there other levers that the university can pull in order to attract students? So that's how we would think about it. And maybe it's the CMO, but maybe it's actually not. Maybe you're just not collecting the right data. Maybe we're not thinking about it the right way. Maybe we're not thinking about our offerings the right way. There are lots of different ways to frame the problem.
So let's get into the people side even more. At the VP and C level right now, what's the thing that the strongest candidates have in common?
So the strongest candidates are really those that develop talent and also those that are really clear on their impact. And so we talk about individuals being talent magnets. Is this a person that brings people along with them? People want to work with them. Either they take people from role to role, or they're just someone in an organization that people want to be around, want to work with, because they are, not that they lead by consensus, but that they bring people along with them. They train people, they develop people, people want to follow them. So that followership is really important with the best talent. And then the other piece is someone who's really clear on their impact. So what are they great at doing? What's the impact they have? Is it repeatable? What's their track record? Those two things, I think, really separate the stronger candidates from those that might not bubble up to the top.
So would you recommend, if someone's listening to this episode right now thinking about a career move, that they make sure they go back and have some of that impact information like documented and ready to pull up? Like what recommendations would you give to that person?
I think part of it is really the self-awareness about what are the problems you're really good at solving. So what are you best at? And so people who hear me interview, so my colleagues or my family, now that I work at home and they overhear my candidate interviews, I always ask, what are you best at doing? What are the things that you are really best at doing? And hopefully they will tell me those things that my client is also interested in. So do they have the right competencies to solve the problems? Those competencies can come from different backgrounds. So we look less at titles of someone's job career and more about the competencies. What are you great at? It's important for someone to have the self-awareness to know what are they not great at? Where do they need scaffolding as well too? So the advice that I give candidates, particularly those that are earlier on, is really think about what are the situations that you are best in, what are the problems you're best at solving, and then where can that be applicable, particularly if you're trying to move from private sector to nonprofit, edtech to higher ed, or higher ed into the private sector, or maybe even healthcare into education. Those are the things that we look at. Because it comes back to what I said before, is that it's not just about filling the role, it's about solving the business problem and solving the need of the client.
So you also used this term talent magnet a few minutes ago. What are some concrete things that somebody who is a talent magnet does that maybe other leaders don't?
Being an exceptional listener. So really understanding what someone on your team needs, what they're delivering, not being afraid to deliver direct, open, transparent feedback. So it's something that we really value at our company, is that direct, candid feedback. I would say continual feedback as well too. And thinking about what are the opportunities I can give perhaps someone earlier on in their career to help develop them, to bring them up to where they need to be or what their aspirations are.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about something big happening this summer, Engage Summit 2026. The next era of higher ed isn't about adding more tools, it's about building an agentic campus where AI works alongside your teams to recruit smarter, support students faster, and scale impact without burning people out. From real-world examples of agentic systems in action to hands-on sessions that show how AI can coordinate enrollment, marketing, advising, and operations, Engage Summit is where institutions move from experimentation to execution. If you're ready to design a campus where AI doesn't just assist, but instead acts, learns, and drives real outcomes, then you'll want to be in Charlotte this summer, June 15th through the 17th. But it gets even better. As an Enrollify listener, you can grab your ticket for half off. Just head to engage.element451.com and use my code Mallory50 to apply the 50% off discount. That's MALLORY50. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the conversation. I feel like this is something you can kind of spot early on, maybe even in someone's career, because I don't know, I know you can train and teach these things, but I think some of this is instinctual too.
I think it is, but it's really just more deliberate. So if it's not instinctual, can you develop it? And are you really trying to develop those people around you? And again, it doesn't mean leading by consensus. It means bringing people along with you, really valuing what they have to say, being a good listener, spreading your arms wide and bringing them with you is really just something that's so important. And we also do a lot of back channel referencing on candidates as well too. And so it's not just what candidates tell us, because they might tell us, here's my track record, which is wonderful. But then we also have to hear from other people about the impact of that person on them and on the organization. And so having the opinions from others around candidates also is something that we really value and is very helpful at getting that point of view.
So there is a lot of movement that's happening, right, between institutions and edtech. Like I've worked for plenty of companies that have loved to hire off of a campus because the assumption is that person comes in with some of the know-how and the inner workings of the organization. But there's also, like, in my direct experience, been a lot of challenges too, from culture fit, pace of work, etc. Like it can be hard to go to the other side of the fence, and I think that's true in both directions. So I would love to know, like, from your data, what is actually happening in terms of hopping the fence right now, and do you feel like there's one direction that yields better results than the other?
It's so based on the organization and what that organization needs and what is the pace of that organization to say, oh, it's much more successful from A to B or B to A. So we have seen it very successful, people from the private sector going to nonprofit institutions and also nonprofit institutions going to the private sector. It really has to do with the individual and the organization. And a lot of it, as you had said, comes down to pace and operating style. And can you adapt to the pace? If you're from private sector going to a university, can you adapt to that pace and realize that you're really leading by influence versus authority? That's really important. And then if you're and you have the, what I call the tenacious yet patient gene. So you have to be focused to get after it, but you have to be really patient because not everybody's going to move at the same pace you do, but realize you still have to move your agenda and your goals through. So that's really important. And then from the university side to the private sector, again, can the organization really embrace you and learn what you, or not learn, but really embrace you and appreciate, that's the word I was thinking of, appreciate the knowledge that you bring and realize that there might be a bit of a culture. You have to adapt for culture. Skills are definitely transferable. And if you're clear on the problems you're really good at and the problems you are not good at solving, that again is really transferable. A lot of it is just environment.
I've had a couple episodes over the course of the last year around the rise of the fractional CMO, and a number of my listeners kind of live in the executive level of Marcom, whether that's within an institution or in the private sector. And I'm just curious if your data supports that observation, because I do feel like I am seeing more and more roles pop up within institutions that are fractional. But then also even on the private side, like edtech is hiring a lot of fractional roles too, it seems.
I think it's about priority of budget. So on an institution, it's always interesting to me if they hire a fractional role or consultant, really, because why would you not? It's almost saying that I don't think that role is going to be important to me longer term, which is why I'm only going to have a fractional person here. The enrollment cycles and marketing cycles are so long at universities, and we're planning year in advance. So to only have someone for a short period of time, they're not staying on to follow through. That's always been a little confusing to me. In the private sector, I think it's also more about, am I solving a short-term problem? Is there a budget issue? Do I need to do this right now? Most of the time I've seen the fractional people stay on full time because the value is proven and maybe the investors recognize, you know what, we really do need to have this kind of talent and we haven't really solved what we set out to solve in a short period of time.
Let's talk about the board, the investors, whoever it is over the organization. What are they maybe not getting right when it comes to, you have framed so well, like it's all about the business needs. And I so appreciate that zoomed out look before making the specific hiring decisions. But like, what are the boards and investors, where are they needing your consultation the most right now around that?
Well, sometimes with the universities, you can have, so boards we know are made up of people from very different backgrounds. What they have in common is that they love the institution that they're serving, but they come at things from very different lenses. And you also might have people that maybe are a little more tech savvy, more innovative, maybe some people that feel a little more old school, more conservative in approach. Again, what they have in common is they love the institution. Sometimes, though, that can lead to a mismatch of how they're hiring because you don't have alignment on what the board is prioritizing. So sometimes you might have board members that are really much more forward on tech and on AI and innovation, and they want to move faster and they want to focus on revenue generation and they want to focus on brand and the things that we have talked about. Whereas others might say, no, we really want to focus on pedigree. We want more comfort. Are they more like us? Are they more traditional? And so that is where we see sometimes a hiring mismatch, particularly on the nonprofit side. Boards are very large. I was on the board of a university myself, and so I've seen this not just as an executive search consultant who advises search committees and boards, but also as someone who was on a board, and I've been inside as well too, is that the difference in perspective can sometimes lead to inaction. And again, the default of focus on pedigree, let's not rock the boat, let's be a little more conservative, which ultimately is not going to help you reach the goals that you need to reach.
Hey, we got to talk about AI because not just because it's a topic I like talking about, but because it is probably changing what these boards are looking for in their senior level hires. And I'm really curious, like how have things changed in the last couple of years around this?
So there are two ways to look at AI. So there's AI in the product that you're delivering to whomever your end user is, whether it's in teaching and learning if you're a university, or the other product, software, other kinds of products that you are delivering if you're in the private sector. So there's that aspect. And then how am I using AI in my own internal operations for efficiencies? We have seen, before I answer your question directly, we have seen in the past year, even maybe 6 months, that all of the candidates that we are working with always ask us how AI savvy is the client in their own internal operations. And if the client is not necessarily embracing AI or thinking about how AI is built into their own operations, how they do business, they're seen as not being tech forward. They don't have the right mindset for innovation. And many times candidates will opt out of searches if they don't find the clients are embracing it. So that is a really interesting trend that we've seen. AI, from a leadership level, AI is never going to replace people. So the differentiators we are seeing is really in judgment, in strategy, in people leadership, in the talent side that I mentioned before. That really becomes the differentiator because it is assumed that leadership has a base level of how they are using AI and bringing it into the institution.
How are you using it in your own firm? Because in the intro, I did note that, right, you pair a top tier team with tech, data, and AI. How are you doing it?
Yeah, so we are using tech and AI to make things more efficient for our candidates, our clients, and ourselves. So we are constantly testing and rolling out new tools internally. And you can really see the difference in what we are spending our time on. So instead of spending X amount of hours on some of the research and the minutia and the reporting, I'm spending my time more on what clients really want me to is what is my judgment? What's my point of view? What's my opinion? Doing more of the assessment. So again, AI will never replace people. It just enables us to do our jobs better and more efficiently. And we launched our firm 3 years ago. Our first hire was a COO who also doubles as our CTO, who could build our systems from the ground up while we were more in the market with our clients and candidates. And we have the benefit of being able to build and leverage, I would say, and embrace technology. So we are fully transparent internally and with our clients. It enables greater collaboration, helps us get to the answers faster, much more creatively I would say, so we can focus on the business problems and really working with the clients on the strategy.
Nice. Are there any other trends that you're seeing that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, so many trends. We could do so many podcasts, I would say. I think I would just come back to the question about how do leaders succeed? So that's been a theme, I think, or an undercurrent throughout the whole conversation. And is it really, it is really about the candidates understanding where their impact is and what they're great at, but also the boards and the hiring managers or hiring teams really understanding how to set the candidates up for success. And so it's one thing to have the skills, but as a candidate, you have to think about, is this an environment that I am going to succeed in? And as the board, they have to think about, what can I do to ensure this candidate is going to succeed so they're not going to get here, find things immovable, and then ultimately leave. So that's always an important topic that we work with clients on too. You've done the hire, you've spent the time, you've spent the money, we're all excited. How do you onboard them, and how do you ensure the rest of the organization is ready for this hire? That's particularly important in higher ed when it's a new kind of role related to online learning, revenue generation, innovation. Those are roles that are new at many universities and they're not quite ready for that hire. So there has to be a lot of groundwork done in advance.
How long are you and your team staying on after that hire is made to ensure that that transition happens and that person is set up for success?
So we're in continual contact with the clients and the candidates to make sure that everything is continuing as it should. Organizations, companies, institutions, the market, everything evolves. Nothing stands still. And so we're not hiring people into static environments. So we do stay in touch just to make sure things are progressing the way they were envisioned. And then we can also play a bigger role in the onboarding. So that is certainly something that we can do for clients.
So if I'm more mid-career right now and I'm listening to this episode and I'm thinking about, that 5-year plan, and I want to be positioned to have someone like you call me one day, right? And help me find that next role. Like, what is something that mid-career future leader can start doing like today?
Really just get the self-awareness about what you're great at doing. Start trying to think of pattern recognition in your background. What's your track record? What's the impact you're having on the people, on the organization, on the market? Those are the things that I would just guide anybody in their career to start thinking about. I wish someone had told me that when I started my career out, however many years ago. I really did not have that guidance. And I had to figure that out as I went along. I have a fairly non-linear, non-traditional path. I was an operator for many years. I worked out of the US for some time. And now I am in this particular role working with talent. And that guidance of just know what you're great at doing, and it's okay to understand what you're not great at doing, and really just have a perspective on that.
How much is someone's professional brand like having an impact in these decisions?
Someone's external brand and how they show up in the market.
Yeah, like, a lot of folks invest on LinkedIn, myself included, right? To build that professional brand that, like, if you were to go into Claude, right? There's certain things I want Claude to return on me if you look me up.
So I think that comes down to what you want to be known for. And then that social media footprint is something that we certainly look at, clients certainly look at. So it is definitely something to pay attention to. That said, though, the impact you have on people is something that we keep coming back to. And so there's a lot of referencing that happens around every single hire. And it's not just with positives, but maybe there's some negative out there. It's really, again, what's the impact? What did this person really do? What's their track record? We try to get behind the noise and what's just online.
Meredith, as we close this out, you've clearly watched a lot of leaders walk into these jobs and either just thrive or flame out. And if you could put one question in front of every candidate before they accept the role and one question in front of every board before they extend the offer, what are those two questions?
So for the candidates, it's let's really think about, is this the environment in which you can succeed? And what has to change for you to succeed? Are you walking in from day one and can have an impact? Or is this something the organization has to embrace and evolve with you over time? So that is one question. And similarly, for any person who is hiring that candidate, what are you doing to set this person up for success? And it's not just in the short term, but again, do you have to change the organization around them? Are there other additional hires? Are there other changes you have to make? Those are harder questions that sometimes organizations and hiring managers don't necessarily want to think about. It's so important, though, about setting someone up for longer term success. For candidates, there's no longer that honeymoon of, I have 100 days to figure things out. It's, I now have to think about things before I start. So when I start, I can have immediate impact. And particularly for senior leadership, CEOs, cabinet level people in universities, the impact has to happen immediately. There's no longer that luxury of time. So that self-reflection and evaluation before you start is so important.
Meredith, thank you so much for your time today. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
We should go for a run together. I'm going to drag you out of your cycling world. And
I'll invite you to one of my spin classes first.
Yeah, I'm coming over. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy your podcast. I do listen to it often.
Oh, thank
you,
Meredith.
It's just such a thrill for me to be on here. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you. And listeners, if you want to find Meredith, I am sure we will include the link to her LinkedIn and her company's site in the show notes. So run, don't walk, and give it a little click if you want to connect with her and her team. And we will catch you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.